Anniversary of Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. I just want to take this time before we get started to say thank you so much to all of our veterans and veteran info warriors out there. We love you. We thank you for your service. We want to honor you today, especially in light of what's happening. Our first story up, and when we read this, our producer, Rob Jacobson, actually ran it into Alex's show because it's of such critical importance, and the absurdity of it all, frankly, is remarkable. Brexit referendum not legally binding, UK Supreme Court told. Now, this aggregated from Reuters, and it eventually made its way. It's up on InfoWars, written by Michael Holden. And this referendum, in which the people spoke directly to their government and said, we've had enough. We're not taking it anymore. We're out of the EU. We're sick of being taxed. We're sick of being told how many people we have to take and what they're doing to our communities. And the Supreme Court, they're trying to use this Article 50 by the end of March, and it's part of the Lisbon Treaty, the EU Lisbon Treaty. It's the first formal step in the process of leaving the bloc, but they're trying to invoke this article that says that Parliament, the UK Parliament, actually has to give its approval. It's, quote, explicit approval. If the Supreme Court upholds the ruling, the risk for government is that the proceedings in Parliament could delay the Prime Minister, Theresa May, her plan to trigger this article. So it looks like they're trying to jeopardize that already. Hasn't even happened yet, but there you go, folks. I mean, the globalists, they, of course, cannot handle the fact that people don't want them running their government anymore. There's a wave of nationalism that's sweeping the globe. It looks like it's about to hit Germany next. Now, here in the U.S., there's a battle underway, and our boss, Alex Jones, hit the hammer on the head beautifully today, talking about the ultimate fake news list. Of course, we have an article up written by Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones. It talks about who the real fake news purveyors are in this country. They just can't handle the fact that we tell you the truth, and we're winning, by the way. We have a list of fake news outlets. I'm going to run through them quickly. The New York Times. Liz Spade, by the way, was on Tucker Carlson's show, apologizing with her tail between her legs for all of the nasty little tweets that her reporters over there at the New York Times had to say about Donald Trump. They're backpedaling now. Of course, the Washington Post, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, Salon, Huffington Post, Rolling Stone, BBC News, Sky News, Financial Times, Politico. We have this laundry list. Here's Alex Jones explaining more.
The current attack on free speech worldwide is so intense, so classically totalitarian, that quite frankly, I'm having trouble even believing it's this bad. They have been incrementally trying to erode free speech and a free press for a long time in Europe and the United States. In the last few years, we've seen Zuckerberg meet with the communist Chinese censors and pledge to them and Merkel that they would bring censorship here to the United States. Matt Drudge came here a year ago and warned us that he talked to a Supreme Court justice and others, and they were told censorship was coming in 2016. We've seen the internet handed over October 1st of this year to an international consortium headed up by the United Nations, with countries like Saudi Arabia on the board deciding what can be on the web and what can't. Now, the European Union Commission, unelected, came out and gave Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other tech giants 24 hours to censor a list of, quote, fake news that they've issued, that Infowars.com is on, that DrudgeReport.com is on, that Breitbart.com is on. And they mix it with stuff like The Onion. This is outrageous. You have to sue someone to prove something's a fraud and then shut them down via damages. You can't, in a free society like the communist Chinese do, say something's fake news because it criticizes the Central Committee and just arrest people. But I'm here to tell you, they've bitten off more than they could chew, in my view. We saw mainstream media further discredit itself with fake polls, lying. They got caught coordinating themselves with the White House, with Hillary. It's truly disgusting. And now we've seen the Washington Post, New York Times, you name it, come out, Politico, and say, time to censor Donald Trump, the president of the United States, for his Twitter saying it's bullying that he calls people liars and scumbags. This is how they plan to bring in the political correctness where only nationalists and patriots and conservatives and veterans are censored.
Now, we know the fake news in this media, CNN namely, is the primary culprit for me as a reporter because they spout lie after lie after lie. I don't know who watches them anyway. Who the heck turns it on other than airports and hospitals? Those are the only two places I've ever really seen CNN. I never turn it on myself willingly. Sometimes you just can't help it. But if you recall, they were trying to spout the narrative that Donald Trump, he was like the second coming of Hitler, basically. You've got Van Jones talking about white lash, which is why he won. Hey, guess what, Van Jones? That's not why Donald Trump won. Donald Trump won overwhelmingly because tens of millions of people voted for him, including Hispanics, including Black Americans, including Latinos, including Muslims, including whites. It has nothing to do with race, you idiots over there. And spouting lie after lie after lie. I just want to take you through a couple of these lies really quickly. Weapons of mass destruction. How many of you out there remember that? Weapons of mass destruction, which is why we went into war with Iraq. Turns out nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction. We'll get into that discussion another day, but mainstream media lie, of course, has been debunked. Another one talking about the Syrian rebels and how it's a humanitarian cause. Turns out most of them are aligned with Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, and ISIS, and we've had a hand in supporting them because the overall underlying reason we have is regime change. We don't like Assad. So that's what's going on with that. And we've been told lie after lie after lie after lie by the mainstream media, who are the real fake news, the purveyors of real fake news. Heading on to this, I brought this article just for you. And when I heard David Brock say this, I nearly fell out of my chair, frankly, folks, because who does he think he is? This man, we have covered some of the things that he has said on InfoWars in the past couple of months. Of course, he was a higher up in the Clinton campaign. He's a Democratic Party insider, if you will. And he actually said that he wants his own version of Breitbart. I cannot make this up. He says a lot of garbage came spewing out of Facebook during the election, and these companies need to adopt new standards and clean their own house. He then goes on to add, we'll be involved in a campaign to push them to do that. He talks about having a media startup that is similar to Breitbart. And, you know, I'm sorry. This is so funny to me because they were, all of the millions and millions of dollars that they spent on crafting a narrative in the media, all of those lies, all of the money that went into this. And now he's jealous of Breitbart News. That's insane, folks, right there. He wants his own Breitbart News, except for the left, which also echoes President Obama, because he's recently been saying that he's going to get into media when he leaves office because he realizes the power of real media. And it comes down to you. You're who matter out there. You're the real media. And, you know, being in the business that we're in, wanting to give people the truth and the hard facts, you guys are the reason this works, frankly. And he's just so frankly, he's jealous. He just can't stand it. And he wants his own Breitbart. Now, moving right along, because we know the mainstream media, they were unsuccessfully able to attack Trump. They couldn't take him down. And now they're 6 weeks into what will be a very successful presidency for him and ultimate job creation. He's already started creating American jobs. He's not even president yet, folks. So I wanted to bring this to you. And Alex covered it yesterday and again today. Masayoshi Son, he is the senior executive of this investment group called SoftBank. It's actually a telecom internet conglomerate. And they're pledging $50 billion in investments, creating 50,000 U.S. jobs. The man isn't even president yet. He's already creating what some estimate as 50,000 jobs coming out of this. Of course, Mr. Son and President-elect Trump were in Trump Tower at the bottom yesterday around those famous elevators talking about this. And here's Alex with more of the story.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. $50 billion is now being announced to be invested in high tech in the United States by the Japanese. Chief executive and chairman of the SoftBank Group, Masayoshi Son, has pledged to invest at least $100 billion in the United States now that Donald Trump has been elected. It's estimated that the deal, if it goes through, will create at least 50,000 new jobs in the United States only in the first year. Mr. Son, the head of one of the most powerful Japanese corporate conglomerates, visited Trump Tower today and told reporters they had made the decision, now that the United States had different leadership, that was basically towards growth. But even the Wall Street Journal had little snide remarks like, Mr. Trump claims responsibility for the announcement that Mr. Son is making when Mr. Son made the announcement from Trump Tower and gave Trump credit. Mr. Son also has a history of going straight to national leaders to talk business. In September, he met with South Korean president and pledged to invest $4.5 billion in the country's technology sector. Now let's go over a list of the super high-tech jobs that he's pledging to bring to the United States, reversing the flow of high technology jobs out of the nation. The $50 billion comes from the overall $100 billion fund. Mr. Son plans to spend heavily in fields including the so-called Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, deep learning, and robotics. He has said he wants to become the Warren Buffett of the tech industry. Want to make this clear. Half of the biggest Japanese investment fund is now coming to the United States. The other half, other parts of the world. Talk about delivering. And under Obama, he made the decision to bring zero here.
I don't think that there's an American family out there that hasn't been touched by the war in Afghanistan in some form or another, a relative, a service member, or a friend serving. We're talking about 15 years of this, folks, and it makes me really angry because it turns out that our BFF, Saudi Arabia, they've been funding, bankrolling the Taliban. This is on the cover of the New York Times. I cannot make this up. So we're in bed with Saudi Arabia, and forgive me for yelling, but this is ridiculous the fact that, they're supporting both the Afghan government and the Taliban, that we've spent $500 billion fighting, 150,000 lives later, both Afghani and American, and we're in a quagmire that we just can't seem to get out of because of our defunct and rogue foreign policies. And yet, for some reason, they're able to thrive and succeed, and it's largely because of Saudi Arabia. So I want to take you to this article. It's 13 pages in length. I personally don't like citing the New York Times, but when something like this pops up, you can't help but mention it. In this interview with the New York Times, this former Taliban finance minister described how he traveled to Saudi Arabia. I'm directly quoting here. From years raising cash while ostensibly doing his pilgrimage, the Hajj, he was able to collect money. And then we go on to say, to talk about Prince Turki Al Faisal, who led the Saudi intelligence agency for 24 years, also an ambassador to the U.S., by the way. Isn't that nice? Until his retirement in 2007, he rejected any suggestion that Saudi Arabia had ever supported the Taliban. But in recent months, the Taliban has mounted and coordinated offensive, a measure that includes 40,000 fighters, according to this article, in 8 provinces, and pushed, largely because they were able to finance themselves through foreign sources. And this article says at the cost of $1 billion. Where the heck are they getting it, folks, is my question. It looks like Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, we're supplying them arms to the tune of the billions. Because we just can't help ourselves and we want them to be able to bomb Yemen. Another story for another day, but moving right along. The cover of Time, and I love this story today because Trump, he really took it like a gentleman when I heard him talk about his love of Time magazine and how he looked at it as a little boy, and he was honored the fact that he was named Person of the Year this year. It really touched me because you could really feel that he was pretty sincere about it. At the same time, I want to point out, he's president of the Divided States of America. That's their title. And Time magazine, it's basically a relic. It's just a little piece of Americana, which is why we frankly tolerate it. They put Adolf Hitler on their cover. And doing this, it seemed like a backhanded compliment. Let's not forget, there was another time not too long ago when they had Trump on their cover. He sells a lot of magazines, let's just face it. And they had him melting his face, sort of like a dripping photograph. And it talks about Trump's meltdown. So it looks like when he promotes their magazine, when they see he's on top and he couldn't be toppled by their sketchy little commentary, they have to celebrate him now. So good for you, Time magazine. You finally got on board with the rest of us. Although I really don't appreciate your little backhanded compliment. Neither does the rest of America who voted for Trump. But hey, whatever helps you sell copies, I'm all for it. Now, moving right along to another story that I'd like to take you to. And I found this on the Washington Examiner. We're running out of time. I want to skip over some of these and go straight to this one. Homeland Security. And let me just tell you right now, under President Obama, our immigration policies have been so run amok. It's amazing we're still a country, frankly. Looking at this as a reporter, you see articles like this. They're not partisan. This was in the Washington Examiner. And just the headline, Homeland Security, 900% surge in asylum demands. Only half of illegals are caught at the border. A damning new report on the administration's immigration policy, which are completely defunct, demands asylum. It's exploded by 900%. It went from 17,000 to 170,000 under President Obama. This according to DHS. And 81% of all illegals are apprehended crossing the border. So it looks like our border protection agents are doing their job. But 54% of them, according to this article, are actually apprehended and assessed. And they know that demanding asylum works, apparently, and it looks like that's where they've listened to our president and this asylum stuff, and it looks like it's working. 900% increase in asylum demands under his presidency, that on the Washington Examiner. I want to take you briefly, we're running out of time, to the story about how Americans are paying Apple, the company Apple, millions to shelter overseas profits. According to this one article, it's up on Bloomberg Finance. They're taking advantage of the honor system, tax exemption, and blurred lines. On the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, I want to take this time once more to say, hey, veterans, we love you. We support you. Thank you so much for your service. Joining me coming up next in studio is Leanne McAdoo.
Our fellow info warriors across the United States and across the planet really love the Hillary for Prison 2016 shirts that we began to put out in 2015. It became a global meme against globalism and corruption, and a very strong maxim that's now being continued on today. Now, President-elect Trump has come out and said it's not his job as president to call for prosecution. He's not supposed to. But that obviously Jeff Sessions, as the new Attorney General, if he's confirmed, will certainly carry out his duties. But Roger Stone a few weeks ago, right after the election, said, Alex, you got to bring Hillary for Prison back. And I said, yeah, but it's a limited edition. It's over. She's been defeated so far. And he said, what about Hillary for Prison 2017? We need those at the inauguration. They're trying to intimidate Trump supporters and nationalists everywhere. That shirt is powerful. It's not just a shirt supporting Trump, like your shirt that says Trump is my president, which we put out before he won, predicting it, putting our name, our guts on the line, but something exposing who the other team was pushing so that people don't forget and so that the push for justice continues. So it's a great way to support the broadcast. It's a great way to have another historic shirt to spread the word and to meet like-minded people of every race, color, and creed who bleed red blood and want justice. It's available. It's another limited run. I don't know how long we're going to offer it, but definitely only a few months. It is Hillary for Prison 2017, and here's the biggest and best part I almost forgot. This shirt arrived in an 18-wheeler, printed right here in the USA a week ago, and I forgot. I've been so busy to even talk about the fact it's been in the store. That on the back of the shirt is a design that I worked on with some of our great graphics people that is George Soros as a goblin. I made a goblin joke a year ago about Trump, saying you better not, actually get in bed with the goblins. He has to work with politicians, but I understand if he has to actually, get knee-deep in their political guts, but he just can't get caught in bed with a goblin. So we now have George Soros, because the media attacked me on this whole goblin meme, and they've made huge jokes about it, but it's totally blown up in their face. We now have George Soros as a goblin on the back, and it says, with a cross through him, an X like Ghostbusters, no Soros, him as a goblin. It says Deport Soros on the bottom, and on the top it says InfoWars established 1996. So it is a limited edition Deport Soros on the back, Hillary for Prison on the front, right-hand shoulder, Infowars.com. It's powerful. Hope you get out to everybody you know, InfoWarsStore.com, or call 888-253-3139. So to all the fellow liberty lovers around the world, I salute you and thank you for your support. This shirt is a celebration of the fight and the victory we've seen in 2016 against tyranny, but looking forward for justice against George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and their entire criminal network. And don't forget our new motto, no more pizza parties.
Well, it's the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. I just want to take this time before we get started to say thank you so much to all of our veterans and veteran info warriors out there. We love you. We thank you for your service. We want to honor you today, especially in light of what's happening. Our first story up, and when we read this, our producer, Rob Jacobson, actually ran it into Alex's show because it's of such critical importance, and the absurdity of it all, frankly, is remarkable. Brexit referendum not legally binding, UK Supreme Court told. Now, this aggregated from Reuters, and it eventually made its way. It's up on InfoWars, written by Michael Holden. And this referendum, in which the people spoke directly to their government and said, we've had enough. We're not taking it anymore. We're out of the EU. We're sick of being taxed. We're sick of being told how many people we have to take and what they're doing to our communities. And the Supreme Court, they're trying to use this Article 50 by the end of March, and it's part of the Lisbon Treaty, the EU Lisbon Treaty. It's the first formal step in the process of leaving the bloc, but they're trying to invoke this article that says that Parliament, the UK Parliament, actually has to give its approval. It's, quote, explicit approval. If the Supreme Court upholds the ruling, the risk for government is that the proceedings in Parliament could delay the Prime Minister, Theresa May, her plan to trigger this article. So it looks like they're trying to jeopardize that already. Hasn't even happened yet, but there you go, folks. I mean, the globalists, they, of course, cannot handle the fact that people don't want them running their government anymore. There's a wave of nationalism that's sweeping the globe. It looks like it's about to hit Germany next. Now, here in the U.S., there's a battle underway, and our boss, Alex Jones, hit the hammer on the head beautifully today, talking about the ultimate fake news list. Of course, we have an article up written by Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones. It talks about who the real fake news purveyors are in this country. They just can't handle the fact that we tell you the truth, and we're winning, by the way. We have a list of fake news outlets. I'm going to run through them quickly. The New York Times. Liz Spade, by the way, was on Tucker Carlson's show, apologizing with her tail between her legs for all of the nasty little tweets that her reporters over there at the New York Times had to say about Donald Trump. They're backpedaling now. Of course, the Washington Post, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, Salon, Huffington Post, Rolling Stone, BBC News, Sky News, Financial Times, Politico. We have this laundry list. Here's Alex Jones explaining more.
The current attack on free speech worldwide is so intense, so classically totalitarian, that quite frankly, I'm having